So school choice case studies, Sweden. So one of the things that's kind of confusing to people, because I've been knocking on doors for Republican candidates since I was 9 years old, and when I was 14, the internet started becoming more popular, and actually wrote some of the very first websites for Republican candidates. I'm the president of the Moore County Men's Republican Club, and they're like, why can't you just get behind school choice, Robert? Why can't you be one for the team? And I'm like, well, school choice isn't a new idea. This has actually been implemented. It's actually, most of Europe has some form of school choice. You know how well they're doing. You guys may have heard of the state Mississippi. This is the poorest state, I believe, in this union. If you took Mississippi and put it in Europe, it would be the richest country in Europe. All right, so I'm not too one to say, whatever they're doing in Europe, I'm more of a, let's do the exact opposite, because they've clearly demonstrated it hasn't worked. But there was Sweden. The United Nations likes to use Sweden to implement its ideas, because they kind of have a unique language. It's not really one, if you do Spanish, there's tons of countries that speak Spanish. There's really only one that speaks Swedish. And so they like to try stuff there. So in 1842 and earlier, in 1842 they had compulsory education laws. And so that's first started. And in 1992, they would have what would be considered a conservative government, a Republican government get in there, and they were going to they're going to try this new radical idea of school choice. And they were going to give 70% of what the state funded to the public schools to send your kid to private school. And so they did that for a while. And then a socialist government happens to be elected. And what they realize is that equity and inclusion aren't really being achieved, because the good schools are just charging more money and the poor kids can't go there anyways. And so they make a law that says you can't charge above what the government is giving you in vouchers, and they move the voucher amount to being equal across all entities. Now, we do business in the state of Florida. Florida passed this school choice law 2 years ago, last year. And this year, they have some legislation in there that if you take voucher money, you can't charge above the voucher cost because of inequality. So we see that the Florida Republican legislator did in one election cycle what the socialists took 5 years to do. And so I don't know if it'll pass or not, but that's what they're trying to do at the moment. And so it's not like these bad ideas only come from one area of our one side of this side. 2008, school inspectorate created. That's basically a school inspector to go around and make sure you're not being discriminatory, you're not teaching hate speech, things like God made man and woman, and they should get married and have kids. That's obviously very, very hateful to say stuff like that. The good thing about the Texas law is they just go ahead and make that school inspectors that first year. They don't wait 16 years to do that. It's actually in SB 2 year one. So you guys don't have to worry about waiting 16 years for that. And then 2011, Sweden creates a national curriculum. Well, you guys don't have to wait 3 years for that. Blue Bonnet is owned by T, and they just created that this last cycle. So you guys got a state curriculum right out the gate, so you guys don't have to wait so long like the poor people in Sweden had to make sure they had a good curriculum. Now, that's not being mandated in your schools yet, but as you can see, it took about 13 years after that until every single school in Sweden now has to teach the state curriculum, mandate the state test. And yeah, you can send your kids to a quote-unquote Christian private school. They just can't say, what Jesus said about marriage, or Jesus said about sexual relations, or any of these things. They just have to teach. You can have a nice teacher up there who's going to teach whatever the government's going to require for him or her to teach, as long as they can keep their job, keep their doors open. And so we'll see if it takes, again, Sweden probably has an easier time of implementing this last step than somewhere like the state of Texas. But again, I remember when Colorado was a Republican state by +10. Right? I remember before I was born, California was a safe Republican state. Right? I hear that your legislators are trying to bring in casinos. You think that's going to help? You know, and when casinos come in, bankruptcy goes up, divorce goes up. You think that's going to be healthy for your families? They're trying to bring in Hollywood. Well, they're trying to take LA and bring it in Texas. You think that's going to help Texas stay red? You think when they're going to give subsidies to Hollywood to make R-rated movies and worse, that your society and your state's going to become a better place? Right? The Democrats have targeted all this. They know all this, right? Sue's son, one of his things is, you know, when the other side is making a mistake or running your playbook for you, you keep your mouth shut. Right? They know all the history of here. And so Sweden is a school choice case study. And again, Sweden has outlawed homeschooling because you don't need a homeschool because the state will pay for your kid to go to whatever private school you want. In Germany, which also has a form of school choice, homeschooling is outlawed because the state will pay for whatever education option you want. And we want to have an equal society, and we can't let some kid, right, rights of a child, you know, it sounds good until you start seeing what the outcomes of legislation are from rights of a child being enacted. Another thing, so a couple quotes, I'll just read these to you because they're kind of small. A Swedish lawyer, Emanuel, who watched this all go down, said, "I would urge Republicans to learn from the Swedish experience, avoid repeating the mistakes of our conservative government in 1992, which presented school choice as a bold freedom reform. The reality is that this approach will lead to a significant increase in government control over the education system." And a Swedish government official reported, "Current school conventions make it clear that education in school shall be comprehensive and objective, and thereby will be created so that all pupils can participate no matter what religious or philosophical views the pupil or its legal guardians may have. In accordance with this, it is the opinion of the government that there is no need for a law to make homeschooling possible based on the religious or philosophical views of the family." And you can look at all that report on Sweden, UN Human Rights Council.